He stood in the middle of the courtroom, the most powerful man in the world. Around him, senators watched in silence. Guards stood at attention. Every eye in the room was fixed on the emperor. Then it happened. A man named Herodes Atticus, one of the wealthiest and most arrogant men in Rome, suddenly lunged forward. His face was red. His voice was shaking. He had lost his temper completely, right there in front of Caesar himself. The Praetorian Guard moved instantly. A hand reached for a sword. One word from the emperor, and Herodes would be finished. One nod, one gesture. The whole room held its breath. Marcus Aurelius raised his hand, not to command the guard to strike, to tell him to stop. The emperor stood up slowly. He looked at Herodes Atticus with calm, steady eyes, and he said only this, "My good fellow, an old man fears little." Then he declared the hearing adjourned and walked away. No rage, no punishment, no revenge, just silence and power. That moment tells you everything you need to know about Marcus Aurelius. He ruled the Roman Empire for nearly 20 years. He commanded armies. He made decisions that changed the lives of millions. He faced war-plagued betrayal and personal loss. And through all of it, he never let anger take the wheel. But here is the thing most people do not know. Marcus Aurelius was not born calm. He was not naturally patient. He struggled with anger. He admitted it in his own private journals. He wrote to himself again and again about the danger of losing his temper. He trained himself day after day to be the man you just saw in that courtroom. And the techniques he used are still alive today, written in a small book called The Meditations, a book he never meant for anyone to read. Today we are going to open that book together. We are going to learn 5 techniques that Marcus Aurelius used to control his rage, not to suppress it, not to pretend it did not exist, but to master it the way a rider masters a wild horse. This is a lesson for anyone who has ever said something in anger that they cannot take back. For anyone who has lost a relationship, a job, or their dignity because of one moment they could not control. For anyone who wants to lead themselves and their life with the quiet authority of a Roman emperor. This is a graded lesson for English learners, but the wisdom is for everyone. Let us begin. Lesson 1. Prepare before the battle begins. Most people think anger is something that happens to them. Someone says the wrong thing. Someone cuts in line. Someone breaks a promise. And suddenly the rage is there, hot and fast, and before you know it, you have already spoken, already acted, already done damage you cannot undo. Marcus Aurelius had a different understanding. He believed that anger does not begin in the moment of conflict. It begins long before that. It begins in the gap between what you expect and what actually happens. And if you want to master anger, you do not wait for the moment of conflict to arrive. You prepare for it before the sun comes up. Every morning before he put on his imperial robes, before he met with senators or generals or foreign ambassadors, Marcus Aurelius sat down and wrote. Not laws, not military plans. He wrote to himself. He reminded himself of something that most people spend their whole lives trying to avoid thinking about. Today he wrote, I will meet people who are rude. People who are ungrateful, people who are arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and difficult. They will test my patience. They will say things that sting. They will act in ways I do not understand. And then he wrote the part that changed everything. These people are not evil. They are simply lost. They cannot tell the difference between good and bad. They act from ignorance, not malice. And because I know this, none of them can truly harm me. None of them can pull me down into anger, because I will not be surprised by them. I have already seen them coming. This technique has a name in Stoic philosophy. It is called premeditatio malorum. It means the premeditation of difficulties. The Romans used it not just for anger, but for all of life. A general who has never imagined defeat is destroyed by his first loss. A man who has never imagined betrayal is shattered when a friend turns on him. But a man who has already walked through these possibilities in his mind, he is ready. He is steady. He does not collapse. Think about the last time you truly lost your temper. Chances are it was not the worst thing that could have happened to you. It was simply something you did not expect. A comment you did not see coming. A situation that caught you off guard. Marcus understood this deeply. He did not hope for the best and then react badly when the worst arrived. He thought about the worst first clearly and honestly, so that when difficulty came, it found him already standing on solid ground. This is not pessimism. This is armor. The soldier who polishes his shield before battle is not afraid. He is prepared. There is a great difference between the two. Begin your day the way Marcus began his. Not with the hope that today will be easy, but with the quiet certainty that today will bring difficulties and that you are ready for them. The difficult colleague at work, you already knew she would be there. The long line at the coffee shop, you already knew it might happen. The small frustrations that used to ignite your temper, you have already met them in your mind before breakfast. Anger needs the element of surprise. Take that away and it loses most of its power. The man who prepares for difficulty is never defeated by it. Lesson 2. Do nothing. Say nothing. Wait. There was a Roman emperor before Marcus Aurelius named Hadrian. He was brilliant. He built walls across Britain. He redesigned cities. He was one of the greatest administrators Rome ever produced. He also had a terrible temper. One afternoon, Hadrian was sitting at his desk writing. A slave nearby made a small mistake, something trivial, a noise, a minor disturbance. We do not even know exactly what it was. History did not consider it important enough to record. But Hadrian's hand moved before his mind could stop it. He was holding a stylus, the sharp writing instrument Romans used. And in one single moment of uncontrolled rage, he drove it into the eye of the slave standing beside him. The slave was blinded, permanently, in 1 second. Because of one moment, Hadrian could not pause. Later, when the heat of the anger had passed, Hadrian was deeply ashamed. He called the man to him. He asked what he could do to make amends. He was the emperor of Rome. He had unlimited power and unlimited wealth. He could give the man anything. The slave was silent for a long time. Then carefully he spoke. "All I want," he said, "is my eye back." There was nothing Hadrian could do. The most powerful man in the world could not undo 1 second of lost control. Marcus Aurelius knew this story. He studied it. He thought about it. And it became one of the foundations of his approach to anger. The pause is everything. The Stoics understood something that modern psychology now confirms. When anger rises, it rises fast. The body floods with heat. The mind narrows. Your vision, both literal and figurative, begins to close in. In that state, you are not thinking clearly. You are reacting from a place that is older and wilder than reason. But anger also peaks and falls. If you do not act in the first few seconds, the sharpest edge of the feeling will begin to soften. Not disappear, not be suppressed, but soften enough for your rational mind to catch up and take the wheel. This is why Athenodorus, the Stoic philosopher who tutored the Emperor Augustus, gave his student a piece of advice that seems almost too simple to be useful. He said, "Whenever you feel anger rising, Caesar, do not say or do anything before you have slowly repeated all 24 letters of the Greek alphabet to yourself. That is it. Just wait. Count the letters. Give your mind time to arrive." Marcus developed his own version of this practice. When provoked, he trained himself to stop before responding, to breathe, to look at the situation not as a man who had just been insulted, but as a man who was about to make a decision he could not reverse. He asked himself one question before he spoke. Is what I am about to say or do worthy of the person I am trying to be? That single question held in the space of a pause changed everything. Think about the moments in your life that you most regret. The words spoken in anger to someone you love. The email sent in frustration that cost you a professional relationship. The reaction that was too fast, too sharp, too final. Almost all of them share one common thread. There was no pause. The action came before the thought. The damage done in 1 second of lost control can take years to repair. Sometimes it cannot be repaired at all. A relationship broken by words said in anger. A reputation ruined by one public outburst. An eye that cannot be given back. The pause costs you nothing. It gives you everything. You are not weak when you choose silence over reaction. You are not passive when you wait before you speak. You are doing exactly what Marcus Aurelius did in that courtroom when Herodes Atticus lunged at him. You are choosing the response. You are refusing to be a puppet pulled by someone else's anger. Your silence in the storm is louder than any word you could say. Lesson 3. Zoom out until the problem disappears. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you are standing on the roof of your house. You can see your street, your neighbors. The cars parked outside. Now rise higher. You are above your neighborhood. You can see the whole city laid out beneath you, thousands of rooftops, thousands of lives happening all at once. Higher still. The city becomes a shape. The country becomes an outline. The ocean appears. The continent curves at the edges. Higher. The whole planet, blue and white and fragile, spinning slowly in the dark. Now find the argument you were so angry about this morning. Find it. Marcus Aurelius practiced this, not as a poetic exercise, as a daily discipline. He called it the view from above, and he returned to it whenever the pressures of empire threatened to pull him into reaction, into anger, into the narrow tunnel where only the immediate grievance is visible. He wrote about it in the Meditations. He reminded himself that emperors before him, men of great power and great fury, men who shook the world with their rages, were now completely forgotten. Their anger had accomplished nothing permanent. Their victims had also died. The conflict itself had dissolved into time, the way a stone thrown into the ocean disappears without a mark. Marcus ruled an empire that stretched from Scotland to Syria. He received reports of war, famine, political betrayal, and personal insult every single day. If he had reacted with full anger to every provocation, he would have been consumed before his first year on the throne. The empire would have burned. So he zoomed out. Not to avoid the problem, not to pretend the difficulty did not exist, but to see it at its true size. Because most of what makes us angry is not actually large. It only feels large because we are standing too close to it. Think of the last serious argument you had. Maybe it was with a family member over something said at dinner. Maybe it was with a colleague over a small decision at work. Maybe it was with a stranger who did not show you the respect you deserved. In the moment, it felt enormous. Your heart was pounding. Your thoughts were fast and sharp and urgent. Now ask yourself, will this matter in 10 years? For most of our anger, the honest answer is no. Marcus went even further. He reminded himself that every person involved in any conflict he was part of would within a relatively short time be dead. Not as a dark thought, as a clarifying one. The man insulting him in the Senate today would be gone. Marcus himself would be gone. The Senate building would one day be ruins. Even Rome, the eternal city, would not last forever. This is not despair. This is freedom. When you understand that time will dissolve almost every conflict you will ever have, something interesting happens. The anger loses its urgency. It is still there, perhaps. You still feel the heat. But underneath the heat, a quiet voice begins to ask, is this really worth it? Is this the hill I want to spend my energy on? Is this moment, which will be forgotten before my grandchildren are born, really worth the cost of my peace? The Stoics had a word for this quality of mind. They called it perspective, and they trained it the way a soldier trains his body. Not once, not occasionally, but every day, until it became a reflex. When the anger rises, rise higher, above the room, above the day, above the year. Look down at the situation from a distance that lets you see it clearly, not as the center of the universe, but as one small moment in an enormously long story. From high enough, every storm looks like a cloud passing through. The argument that feels like the end of the world today will be in 10 years a story you can barely remember. The person who made you furious this morning will, in the long accounting of your life, occupy very little space. Marcus knew this. He chose to know it on purpose every day before the anger could convince him otherwise. Zoom out. The view from above does not make you cold. It makes you wise. It does not make you indifferent to injustice. It makes you accurate about which battles deserve your fire and which ones deserve only your silence. Most deserve your silence. Lesson 4. They are made of the same material as you. There is a passage in the Meditations that Marcus Aurelius returned to more than almost any other idea. It appears in different forms across different books. He wrote it to himself so many times that scholars believe it was the single hardest lesson he had to keep relearning. It goes like this: the person who has wronged you, who has been rude to you, who has betrayed you or insulted you, or made your life difficult, that person shares your nature, not your blood, not your history, but your mind, your capacity for reason, your share of something larger than both of you. And because of that, you cannot truly be their enemy. This is not a soft idea. It is one of the most demanding ideas in all of ancient philosophy. Marcus was not asking himself to like difficult people. He was not asking himself to pretend that bad behavior was acceptable. He was asking himself to look past the behavior to the person and to remember that the person underneath their anger or their cruelty or their ignorance was built from the same materials as him. He used a striking image to describe this. He said we were born to work together the way feet work, with hands the way eyes work with each other, the way the upper and lower rows of teeth work in the same mouth. To turn against one another is unnatural. To feel hatred toward someone who shares your nature is to fight against your own body. Think about that image for a moment. Upper and lower teeth. They press against each other. They create friction. Sometimes one bites the other by accident. But they do not stop working together. They cannot. They are part of the same system serving the same purpose. Marcus saw human beings that way. Now remember the moment in the courtroom. Herodes Atticus, red-faced and shouting, lunging at the emperor. Most rulers in history would have seen an enemy in that moment. A threat to be crushed. A humiliation to be avenged. Marcus saw something different. He saw a man who had lost control. A man in pain because people who behave that way are almost always in pain. A man who, like all people who cannot manage their anger, was suffering from a kind of blindness. He could not see clearly. He did not know what he was doing to himself. Marcus felt no hatred, perhaps not even anger, just a kind of clear, steady understanding. He is like this because he cannot tell good from bad. What else could he do with that kind of character? This shift in how you see people who anger you is perhaps the most difficult of all 5 lessons. It requires something that does not come naturally to most of us. It requires genuine curiosity about the inner world of the person who has hurt you. Why did they say that? What are they afraid of? What have they been through that made them this way? Not to excuse them, not to let them off the hook, but to understand that people very rarely act badly from a position of strength and peace. They act badly from a position of fear, confusion, and pain. When someone is cruel to you, they are usually showing you their wound, not their character. Marcus trained himself to see that wound before he saw anything else. And when he saw it, his anger lost its footing. Because it is very hard to rage against someone you are genuinely trying to understand. Anger wants an enemy. Understanding refuses to provide one. This does not mean you become passive. Marcus was not passive. He still made decisions. He still held people accountable. He still ran an empire with a firm hand. But he did it without the poison of hatred, without the weight of rage, without the exhausting darkness that comes from treating every difficult person as your personal enemy. The people who test you the most are not your enemies. They are, as the Stoics would say, your teachers. Every rude colleague, every difficult family member, every stranger who cuts you off in traffic, each one is a chance to practice the most important skill a human being can develop. The skill of seeing clearly even when everything in you wants to see red. You cannot hate someone you truly understand. Lesson 5. No one can make you angry without your permission. Here's a question Marcus Aurelius asked himself in the Meditations. A question so simple it almost seems naive. But sit with it for a moment, because underneath its simplicity is something that can change the way you move through the world. He asked if someone gave you a gift and you refused to accept it. Who does the gift belong to? It belongs to the person who tried to give it. Now apply that same logic to an insult, to a criticism, to an act of cruelty or disrespect. If someone throws their anger at you and you choose not to receive it, not to let it land, not to let it become yours, whose anger is it? It is still theirs. This is the fifth and perhaps the most liberating lesson Marcus Aurelius left us. Anger is not something that happens to you. It is something you choose in a fraction of a second whether to accept. Between the moment someone provokes you and the moment you feel rage, there is a judgment. A small, fast, almost invisible decision. The decision that says, yes, this has harmed me. Yes, I have been wronged. Yes, I will be angry now. The Stoics called this judgment the assent, and they taught that the assent is always yours. Always. No matter what someone says or does, the assent belongs to you and no one else. Marcus wrote it plainly in the Meditations. Reject your sense of injury, and the injury itself disappears. He is not saying the other person did nothing wrong. He is not saying you should pretend bad things are good. He is saying something far more radical. He is saying that the injury only exists because you have decided it does. And because you made that decision, you can unmake it. This is not easy. Let us be honest about that. When someone humiliates you in public, when a person you trusted betrays you, when years of loyalty are repaid with contempt, the natural response of the body and the mind is fury. Hot, immediate, completely human fury. Marcus felt it too. He wrote about it. He described the heat rising the impulse to lash out the pull toward revenge. But he also wrote about the moment after that. The moment when you can step back from the feeling and ask, what is actually happening here? Has my soul been damaged? Has my character been touched? Has anything that truly matters been taken from me? And in most cases, honestly examined, the answer is no. Someone said something unkind. Someone acted selfishly. Someone failed to give you the respect or the recognition you deserved. These things sting. They are real. But they do not have to become your prison. They only become your prison when you hand over the keys. Marcus was the most powerful man on earth. He could have punished every person who ever crossed him. He had the legal authority, the military force, the absolute power to do so. And yet, he chose again and again not to. Not because he was weak, but because he understood something that most people with power never learn. The person who needs to punish every insult is not in control. They are controlled by their own reactions, by their own need for vindication, by the emotional strings that anyone can pull at any time simply by saying the wrong word. True power looks different. True power is the man in the courtroom who raises his hand to stop the sword, speaks one quiet sentence and walks away. True power is choosing your response so completely that no one else can choose it for you. He also wrote this, and it is worth carrying with you. How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? Think about every time anger has cost you something real, a relationship, an opportunity, your own peace of mind. Now think about what originally triggered that anger. In almost every case, the trigger was smaller than the damage. The cause was a spark. The consequence was a fire. Anger always costs more than whatever started it. This is the quiet arithmetic of the meditations. The insult lasts a moment. The rage you carry in response can last years. The wound someone gives you might heal in a week. The wounds you cause in your anger might never heal at all. So Marcus made a different calculation. He decided every day and every situation to keep the cost low, to refuse the injury, to stay the emperor of his own inner world, even when the outer world was chaos. The emperor controls himself. That is how he controls everything. Go back to that courtroom one more time. Herodes Atticus lunging forward, the sword half drawn, the room holding its breath. In that single moment, Marcus Aurelius used everything we have talked about today. He had prepared his mind that morning, as he did every morning for exactly this kind of provocation. So he was not surprised. He was not caught off guard. The anger had no opening to rush through because he had already closed that door before dawn. When the moment arrived, he paused. Not for 24 letters, perhaps only for one breath. But that breath was enough. Enough for his reason to arrive before his rage could speak. Then he zoomed out. Not to the ceiling of the courtroom. Further, to the long view. To the question that Stoics always ask in moments of heat. Does this moment in the full accounting of an emperor's life, in the full accounting of Rome's history, in the full accounting of time itself, deserve my fire? It did not. He looked at Herodes Atticus, and he saw not an enemy, but a man undone by his own anger. A man who would carry the shame of that moment long after the emperor had forgotten it. He felt perhaps something close to pity. He did not hate him. He understood him. And then he refused the injury. He picked up no sword. He issued no punishment. He simply said his quiet words and walked away, taking his peace with him, leaving the chaos to the man who had created it. 5 lessons, 1 moment, a lifetime of practice. This is what Marcus Aurelius spent his entire adult life building. Not walls, not armies, not monuments. He built something no one could see from the outside, and no one could take from him. He built a self that was harder to conquer than any fortress, a mind that could stand in the middle of any storm and remain at its center completely still. Anger is fire. Every person carries it. You cannot get rid of it, and you should not try. Fire kept under control gives you warmth. It gives you light. It gives you the energy to fight for things that genuinely matter, to stand firm against real injustice, to protect the people you love with everything you have. But fire without discipline does not warm. It burns. It destroys the hand that holds it before it destroys anything else. And the wreckage it leaves behind, the broken words, the severed relationships, the permanent damage done in one uncontrolled second. No emperor in Rome, no matter how powerful, could ever fully repair. Marcus Aurelius knew this. He built his 5 techniques not to eliminate the fire, but to hold it wisely. To be always the one who decides when it burns and when it rests. You can do the same. Prepare in the morning. Pause before you speak. Zoom out when the world feels too close. Look for the shared humanity in the person who is testing you. And when someone throws their anger your way, remember that you do not have to catch it. These are not complicated ideas, but they are not easy ones either. Marcus himself had to relearn them every day. He wrote them to himself in the dark in military tents, on campaign in the middle of a rain that never gave him a moment of true peace. He was not a saint. He was a man working every single day to be better than his worst impulses. That is all any of us can do. The emperor controls himself. That is how he controls everything. Thank you for spending this time with these ancient ideas. They have survived nearly 2,000 years because they work, not because they are easy, because they are true. Keep listening, keep growing your mind, and your English sharpened together. Until next time, take care of your inner world. It is the only kingdom that is truly yours. Goodbye.